When Narain Karthikeyan pulled onto the grid for the 2005 Australian Grand Prix, India entered a new dimension of sporting ambition. Until that moment, India had iconic cricket heroes, chess grandmasters, Olympic wrestlers and tennis champions, but never a representative in the most exclusive, technologically advanced and financially demanding motorsport on Earth. Formula One had always felt distant, glamorous, inaccessible. And now, in a flash of yellow from the Jordan EJ15, India was no longer watching from the outside. It was finally part of the story. For a nation of over 1 billion people, Narain became much more than a driver. He became a symbol, a proof of possibility. A living reminder that talent from anywhere could rise to the top if the determination was strong enough. He spoke often about the weight of this expectation, saying he had the hopes of a nation on his shoulders. That pressure would shape every chapter of his journey. Narain didn't stumble into Formula One. He fought through the brutal European junior ladder, beat future champions like Jenson Button in his early years, and earned widespread respect for his bravery, especially in wet conditions. He became the first Indian driver to test for the legendary Jaguar F1 team, and newspapers back home hailed him as the fastest Indian in the world. By the time he signed with Jordan in 2005, he wasn't just another rookie, he was a national hero, before he had even turned a wheel in anger. But Formula One has a way of testing even the strongest dreamers. What awaited Narain wasn't the glory his early career promised, but a harsh collision with the economics, politics, and brutal competitive structure of the sport. His story is not about failure, it's about the unforgiving reality behind the dream, the money versus the machine. Narain's contract with Jordan was both a breakthrough and a warning. Jordan needed financial lifelines, and Narain brought crucial sponsorship money from India. But even before the season began, cracks in the foundation were already visible. Jordan, once a fierce midfield team that had battled Schumacher and won races, had fallen into severe financial decline. Development had stagnated, morale was low, resources were minimal. Narain was stepping into Formula One at the very moment his team was stepping out of its competitive era. Despite the machinery, Narain showed flashes of incredible speed, moments when the raw driver underneath the circumstances revealed himself. But talent alone cannot compensate for an uncompetitive car. The EJ15 was unpredictable, fragile, and several seconds off the pace of the frontrunners. In races where other drivers were tuning balance and strategy, Narain was fighting just to keep the car stable. Even his lone points finish, 4th place at Indianapolis, came in a chaotic race where only 6 cars competed due to a tire safety scandal. It went into the record books, but it never reflected his true capabilities. When Jordan was sold and rebranded as Midland for 2006, Narain was left without a race seat. Sponsorship deals fell apart. Politics took precedence over performance. He signed as a test driver for Williams, a much more prestigious environment, yet even that couldn't translate into an F1 return. The door was always slightly open, but never enough for him to walk through. In another timeline, perhaps with more stable backing or a midfield team willing to build around him, Narain might have carved out a long-term F1 career. But Formula One is not a meritocracy. It is a battleground where money, timing and opportunity often matter more than sheer ability. The second chance and the public humiliation. After disappearing from F1's front line, Narain rebuilt his reputation elsewhere, winning in A1 GP for Team India, competing in Le Mans prototypes, and proving he was still as fast as ever. And then, unexpectedly, Formula One came calling again. The Hispania racing team, HRT, one of the weakest teams the sport had ever seen, needed experience, technical feedback, and sponsorship. Narain fit the bill. But what awaited him was not redemption, it was a survival exercise. HRT's lack of budget was so severe that the team sometimes missed practice sessions simply because the car wasn't ready. Spare parts were scarce, testing was minimal. Narain wasn't competing to move forward, he was competing not to break down. He fought through mechanical failures, overheating cockpits, setups that made the car behave unpredictably, and relentless pressure from blue flags. Yet the world only saw him being lapped. They didn't see the broken suspension mounts, the overheating brakes, or the lack of updates that every frontrunner takes for granted. The criticism became personal. When Sebastian Vettel called him a cucumber, the insult echoed globally. Narain responded with dignity, but the damage was done. The public mocked him without understanding the machinery he was wrestling with. Few realized that no driver, no matter how talented, could have extracted meaningful results from the HRT. Yet Narain never complained. He showed up, he did the work, and he absorbed every blow with quiet resilience. That strength would define the next chapter of his story, the hometown hero. If Narain's F1 journey had ended with being lapped in backmarker machinery, the narrative would have been incomplete. But in 2011, something extraordinary happened. India hosted its first Grand Prix. The Budd International Circuit was brand new, the stands were packed, and motorsport fever swept across the nation. HRT, understanding the historic moment, granted Narain a one-off race seat for his home Grand Prix. It wasn't just a symbolic gesture, it was a moment of deep emotional significance, not just for him but for millions of Indians who finally saw one of their own compete on home soil. Narain fought mechanical gremlins, tire wear, and the relentless pace of the leaders. Yet when he crossed the finish line, the crowd erupted. This wasn't a victory in the conventional sense, but it was the culmination of a dream. The moment when a boy from Coimbatore, who once raced on kart tracks carved from dusty fields, finally competed in front of his own people in a Formula One race. He later said, "Sunday is one of the proudest days of my life." And for many in the stands, it was the proudest day of theirs too. The Indian Grand Prix was his redemption, proof that his journey mattered beyond points, podiums, or headlines. The entrepreneur and the true legacy. When HRT folded at the end of 2012, Narain's Formula One career officially closed. But unlike many backmarker drivers who vanished into obscurity, Narain built a second life in motorsport. He became a race winner in Super GT, one of Japan's most prestigious categories. He competed in Super Formula, one of the fastest series outside F1, and he transitioned into entrepreneurship, founding NK Racing Academy to help develop the next generation of Indian drivers. This academy may ultimately become the most important part of his legacy. India's motorsport ecosystem is still young, underfunded, and lacking infrastructure, but Narain became the mentor he never had. He created opportunities where none existed. He provided guidance, engineering insight, and international exposure to young talent. His legacy is not defined by the cars he drove, the points he scored, or the criticism he endured. It is defined by the barrier he broke. He was India's first Formula One driver, the pioneer who stepped into the unknown, survived the politics and poverty of the sport, and emerged with dignity, resilience, and a purpose far larger than personal success. Narain Karthikeyan's F1 chapter may not have produced trophies, but it produced something far more valuable: inspiration. And inspiration is a legacy no scoreboard can ever erase. Narain's story resonates because it was never meant to be easy. He came from a country where motorsport lived on the fringes of public consciousness, where karting tracks were scarce, where sponsorship depended more on hope than strategy, and where racing was considered a luxury, not a career. Yet he walked a path no one had paved before him. Every test he earned, every contract he signed, and every race he started carried the weight of representation. Young Indian fans who had never heard a Formula One engine roar suddenly had a reason to tune in. They saw someone with a name like theirs, a passport like theirs, standing on the same grid as Schumacher, Alonso, and Raikkonen. It changed what felt possible. As his driving career evolved beyond Formula One, Narain embraced an identity that many athletes struggle to accept, the role of a builder rather than a competitor. In Super GT, he didn't just participate, he thrived, proving that his speed and adaptability were far from spent. In Super Formula, he raced wheel-to-wheel with the next generation of global talent, sharpening his instincts and showcasing the relentless work ethic that had carried him across continents. Each chapter reinforced a truth often forgotten in elite sport. Greatness isn't exclusive to podiums. Sometimes it's found in perseverance. He invested time, resources, and decades of hard-earned wisdom into young drivers who reminded him of himself. He brought in engineers, coaches, and data specialists who could give Indian talent the same level of preparation seen in Europe or Japan. He pushed for global exposure, sending protégés abroad so they could learn on tracks that had shaped champions. In doing so, he quietly ignited a cultural shift. For the first time, Indian motorsport had a ladder, it had structure, it had a future. Today, Narain stands as a symbolic figure, not simply as a racer, but as a foundation stone. His journey demonstrates how far determination can carry someone when the odds suggest surrender. It shows that a pioneer's value isn't measured in trophies, but in transformation. Whether or not India produces the next great Formula One star, the seeds he planted will continue to grow. New karting circuits, junior series, fan communities, and engineering talent trace their roots back to the doors he forced open. Narain Karthikeyan may have left Formula One without silverware, but he left it with something much more enduring: the blueprint for possibility. His life reminds us that the world's biggest barriers don't fall with a single triumph. They crumble gradually through courage, sacrifice, and relentless forward motion. And long after the engines go silent, long after the helmets are hung up, it is this quiet, unwavering force that defines a true pioneer's legacy.
If you like what you've learned, then please subscribe for more Motorsport Decoded.